The Hummer is so insane. I think that's the same thing with the Hummer. The performance is there. And so that alone, like, it can do all this stuff. And so I think there's going to be people who buy it who are like, I don't care if it's electric or not. And the other thing to keep in mind, it's kind of funny. Everybody associates pickup trucks with the middle of the country, and those buyers are not going to go electric and blah, blah. And that's probably true. But crazy pickup trucks are primarily sold to wealthy people on the coast, like the Ford Raptor. All the sales for that are in the East Coast and in California. That's where all those people are. And they'll go electric if it means they can get, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds and roll 15 inches of ground clearance or whatever it is. They'll do that all day long.
Yeah, that's like
the ultimate.
That's what's funny about like the Cybertruck and the F-150 Lightning is like, I feel like I'm talking to two very different groups of people. Because I'm talking about a truck on one hand where it's like utility matters and this thing can power your tools and it's got a huge amount of covered storage and look at all this great utility. Don't you want this better truck? But then there's also this like premium electric vehicle enthusiast who's like, I never wanted a truck, but this one is sick. Like I ordered a Cybertruck. I don't need a truck. But how many million people are in the same boat? Like the Cybertruck's kind of cool and I'm an electric car person. So here we are. It's fascinating.
Do you not feel that the Cybertruck is the ugliest thing that you've ever seen in your entire life?
Okay, you know what's funny about that?
You don't think that?
It isn't actually ugly to me. It does have a very strange look. It looks like a 2D render sometimes. Like I've only seen it in person once, and I've seen it in various videos. But to me, it's like the brutish nature of it is kind of endearing. Like they don't care about looking good, which is like kind of cool to me. I don't know why. It's just interesting. But then also like, it's just a tool. Like it doesn't have to look that great.
Right. I'm interested to see how that will go. A lot of people that I know who have never had a truck are interested in that or claim to be. I think that a lot of people don't realize how big trucks are. And I think that will be a huge wake-up call for a lot of people. People who live in like the city and go to Trader Joe's, they think they want this thing. I don't think they quite realize. They don't drive trucks frequently. I drive trucks to review, and even still, when I get into a pickup truck, not even a heavy duty, just a regular F-150 or whatever, I get in and I'm like, this thing is huge. I would not want this in anything other than a rural area or like an Exurb or something like that.
Trying to park one of those.
It's not, and I think all these city people who like coming from a Model 3,
the city is the last place I'd want the Cybertruck, other than parking, which is pretty funny because in the city when it snows and there's just snowbanks everywhere and parking is horrific. You just pull up on like a snowbank or whatever. Who's gonna stop you? You gonna give me a ticket? I'm just on a snowbank. I don't know. No, that's funny. There's a lot of like, the questionable like nature of Cybertruck and whether it will actually be able to ship as is and all this other, like I put in an order and I expect them to make what they showed me, but they're obviously always making changes. So who knows?
It's already become clear to me. I don't know what you think of this, but they're not going to hit end of year.
No,
I mean, that's going to happen. I got in fights with people about that. People on my Twitter were saying the Cybertruck's going to beat the Hummer EV to market. It may still, but it'll come by the end of the year, Elon said. And I'm like,
No, I am firmly in the camp of electric cars are harder to make than everyone thinks, including Tesla. So Elon time's real. Like that will not come out when they say it will. Neither will the Roadster, which was like 5 years ago or something crazy, by the way. I do think though one of the biggest observations I've always had about these new EVs when they get announced is they're always announced for some time way in the future. And they always get compared to like other things in the future versus it's hard to compare stuff out today with stuff in the future is what I always say. So like F-150 Lightning might come out next year, maybe. Are we supposed to compare it during its announcement with other stuff available today? Or should I compare it with other stuff that also doesn't exist that will also maybe come out next year? You don't do a ton of like direct head-to-head comparisons, but do you ever think about that?
And I especially try to avoid future stuff in part because of that, because you end up with a lot of stuff that just, I don't put a lot of faith in what companies tell me. I still remember when I went on the launch of the Mazda 6, which is like a little mid-sized sedan, and they told me, they said, this was in 2014, 13 maybe. They said the diesel version is just 6 months away. And that never came out. But they were very firm at that launch that the diesel version was 6 months away. And I don't know. I always think about things like that. It's a little bit difficult, yeah, when an automaker comes out. And yes, I generally don't do a lot of head-to-head stuff. I just find people like to focus on individual cars. When I have relevant experience, I will talk about that like during the video, like, oh, this truck is whatever. But having the two next to each other, it makes things way more logistically complicated. And I found that it just sort of, for some reason, diffuses interest a little bit, at least on my channel. I noticed that some channels do a little better with head-to-head stuff, but I've found the opposite.
Yeah, unless it's like two really, really obvious rivals, it's usually not as interesting. But I also think what you said, I think it's healthy to not just blindly trust everything that comes from a company, just because there's so many different variables and so many different people who are talking to each other, that your own experience will trump that every time. Like, just go with what actually exists.
Right.
And also in the tech world, I have a saying, only buy something based on what it is now today and not on the promise of some future, especially with software
Right.
updates.
Right.
They'll
Software
tell you something's
updates,
coming,
right,
and
right.
and it would be nice if it does come out, but don't buy it if you wouldn't like it without that thing, because it might not ever happen.
Right, and in some cases, it might not come, or it might come in a year, and then you've purchased it and used it for a year without that thing. That happens, yeah, and it happens in the car world too, honestly, and yeah, for sure. Buy what you like. Buy the thing that you're seeing and you're walking up to and looking at and playing with today. I totally agree with that. But yeah, it's an interesting world, and yes, part of the problem I think with the believing what companies say is an interesting concept. The Tesla Twitter people are just a completely different level of insane that I've never experienced before. And what that company says is the word of God to them, and that they don't believe that there's ever any. And I'm pretty positive about Teslas compared to most car reviewers. Um, and yet I still get like vicious complaints from some of these people sometimes because I don't believe this thing or
Yeah,
that.
that might be they might be the most defended cars by people who have never actually used them, which is very strange to me. Because in the tech world, there are rampant fanboys of certain companies and products, even if they don't use them. Like, a product will come out from a company they love, and even if they've never used it, they will trust the gospel that is that company's advertising messaging. And if your review goes against it, you must be paid, or you must be a shill, or you're a fanboy of the other guy.
The frequency of which I'm accused of being paid is quite unbelievable. I'm sure you get this also. I don't get it as much as I see some other people get it, as much as I expect. I think it's really clear that I try to be really objective, but still, like, and some of the stuff I'm being accused of being paid about is so insane. And I'm just like, what could you possibly be thinking? But that's, I guess, the reality when you're dealing with the general
Yeah,
public.
there's got to be a reason why you don't like the same thing I like. Maybe it's because you're paid. I don't know.
Right.
That's
It can't be because my taste is
yeah.
wrong or our tastes differ or whatever. And the thing that really is crazy to me, I suspect you don't see this quite as much because the gadgets you're reviewing are less valuable, although you probably do. But in the car world, the amount of personal investment people have in the cars is insane. I frequently make fun of my own cars. Like, they're unreliable. I own this convertible Mercedes G-Wagon, which I think is one of the ugliest cars ever made. I talk about that. I'm like totally fine with all that. But when I say something like negative like that about somebody else's car, people, it's like you insulted their child.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how could you take a possession this personally? I never have
You know
understood
what's
that
funny about
behavior.
that? I think it's I actually understand that in the car world, because that is probably one of the top two most expensive, important buying decisions you make. And so in a way, it reflects a lot about you and your priorities and your knowledge of the things you could have done, right? So if you spend all that effort and energy and you make this huge purchase in your life and someone says something bad about it, you kind of feel like you need to defend yourself against it. But in the
Right.
tech world, I see a very high level of this around smartphones, and I think it's because not that they're super valuable, but because they are some of the most personal pieces of tech that you can possibly own. What is more personal?
Oh, interesting. It's always with
Exactly.
you. It has all your
It's
equipment,
it
your
runs your life
photos,
basically.
your
You're holding it all the time. It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
borderline fashion accessory to some people. Like, to speak
Right.
negatively about someone's smartphone purchase decision would be like speaking negatively about their hairstyle or something. It's like, that's a part of me, and that's the way people react, which is always funny. Um, yeah,
I've never gotten into the things that I possess. I've never gotten into personally defending them. Even the cars. I get that it's an expensive decision, but like you made it. Like, who cares? You know, like if that's what you decided, then that's what you decided. And I just, oh, I think people are so crazy, but they can be so militant about some of this stuff. And sometimes I will say something in a video and just be like nervous. Like I know I'm
Oh
gonna get
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
huge
yeah. You
backlash
always know.
coming.
Yeah, I know. There's these days I like to defend it just by recognizing like smartphones aren't like young anymore. Like it's kind of hard to get a bad new phone if you're anywhere in the $300+ price range of new phones from the big companies. Like you can't really get a bad one anymore. Does it feel kind of the same
Right.
way in the car industry? Like obviously, if you buy an
Yeah.
old car now, it can be bad. But if you buy a new car,
Right.
it's probably fine.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes I get friends or family members coming up to me and saying, "Listen, I've spent hours researching this. I've watched your videos, watched everybody's videos. I'm trying to figure out the best small crossover to buy. Is it the CRV or the RAV4 or the Mazda CX-5?" And they'll be floored when I tell them which dealership is physically closer to your home. Like we're not talking about, none of these will be bad. Like you're not going to make a mistake here. And there's very few bad cars, maybe none on sale
Yeah.
right now. And so that makes things a little bit easier. Yeah, I'm not ever starting a review ripping up a car anymore. It wasn't quite like that when I first started. There were some, like Maseratis were pretty weak 4 or 5 years ago, and I did some tough reviews on those that got a lot of pushback. But generally speaking, sometimes I just find it insane that people can even get to that level of granularity. If it was me, the CX-5 versus the whatever, which salesperson was nicer?
Yeah.
You know, just this is not a decision you need my help with.
Do you have any regrets from things you've said in videos in the past? Things you wish you didn't, maybe wish you edited out, or
I always regret when I make a mistake.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
sure you
yeah.
feel like this too. Like, and sometimes they're small, but sometimes like I still lie awake at night. You know. But no, I don't think I've ever been wrong. You know.
Yeah. There's being a little bit wrong where it's like maybe you slip and say the wrong number or the wrong part name or whatever, but it doesn't substantially change the point you were trying to make. And then there's like being wrong where you're like, this is bad when it wasn't bad, or this is relying.
Right. Making an objective individual mistake like a number or something, those are annoying. I always wish I could take them out. I guess the flood of email starts coming in immediately and I'm like, oh crap. But actually being wrong about a review, I don't know. I like to think that I got them all right. The viewers may have different opinions, but that's kind of the whole point of this. You know, that's kind of what we're doing here. The thing that annoys me the most probably, and maybe you get this as well, the people who tell you that you missed something is really annoying to me. My videos are very long. I've got this Bronco video going up. It's going to be 40 minutes long. I had to cut 5. I don't go over 40. I just think that's insane. I had to cut 5 minutes even to get to that point. But I'm going to get emails from people saying, oh, you missed this, you missed that. And it's like, no, I generally don't miss this stuff. But at some point, it's too much. And that's the one that gets to me. It's like, I'm not wrong. I didn't miss it.
Yeah, I feel like that's why I loved your review of the Corolla, where you looked at the inside of that car and it was just like, oh, there isn't actually anything here. You really can't say anything about this like blank slate of a car. I thought that was great.
Right.
That was fun. All right, well, thanks for watching, Doug fans. I appreciate you showing out for the clip. If you haven't already subscribed, you definitely should. This is a great channel to get subscribed to.
Oh, yeah.
But also, there's going to be more guests in the future, and maybe you'll like those too. So it's a win-win for everybody. Hit that big red button. See you guys in the next one.